Okay, it's Hyaku Shiki, 96, your favourite billionaire philanthropist, coming back from a very important business meeting for my business that's worth over £1 trillion. But all that aside, today we're going to be talking about backlogs, specifically how to manage your backlog. I feel like it's a subject a lot of people have negative feelings towards, and perhaps a bit of a sense of guilt, you could even say. So the whole purpose of this video is going to be talking about how I manage my backlog into making it something that is one of my most fun aspects of the hobby. So without further ado, let's go. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually about a previous video that I did, and so you'll see in the top here a little title card that will link towards that, which is I gave collecting advice. So now that we've done that, I think the first thing I really want to talk about is a link to that video, and that's the idea of purpose. So when it comes to purpose, you have to think about what you're trying to accomplish with your collection in the first place. So for example, my collection is all about building a library of games. I want to have a freedom of choice of all sorts of different kinds of games that I'm looking forward to play. I don't want to have a situation where I don't really fancy anything and I'm kind of stuck being a bit bored. That was a common situation I had when I was younger, because obviously I didn't have adult money, I didn't have access to half as many games as I do now. And so for me, that's kind of part and parcel with it. You could think about it as kind of like a streaming style approach where you just are overwhelmed with great choices and it's so much fun to get round to them, and then you've got ones that you're waiting for ages to finally watch or play, and then you finally do it and it's so fun and exciting. So that's my kind of part of collecting. I just want to be overwhelmed with good choices, and I think that's a fun thing for me. What your purpose is, I'm trying to say, can link into your actual backlog. So if you keep playing games at the heart of why you collect in the first place, then the ways you approach your backlog will be more positive. And that of course links into my second point. And that second point is meaningful collecting. So you have to ask yourself, why are you buying the games in the first place? What kind of games are you buying? I feel like for me, a common mistake I see when it comes to collecting is people buy games because they are expensive. Now, games that are great come in all different price points, but the only determinant, as far as I'm concerned, that makes collecting meaningful is, do you actually like it, right? If you had a watch list and you just added things because you'd heard about them, not because you wanted to watch them, that watch list would become less meaningful and less exciting, and it would just kind of be a bit cluttered. And it's the same with your collection. If you own titles that you are interested in playing and that you want to play again, then that's going to make the backlog experience way better. In other words, it should be enjoyable to progress through your backlog. And so by having the right kind of meaningful collection for you, that's how you will achieve that. The next point I want to talk about is about gratitude. So in other words, I think it's really good practice to appreciate your own collection as it is right now. Let me tell you, after over 13 years of collection, I have never had a single moment where I've not wanted anything new for that collection. And I collect in several different niches, and it's the same across all of them. You will find always something new and exciting that's coming out. There are plenty of fantastic skilled people making great new products, even re-releasing old products, or you even sometimes discover things you never knew existed before. And that's part of what the fun is. But if you get so caught up in the things that you don't have instead of appreciating the things that you do have, you end up not enjoying using them as much. I find myself spending time on purpose being here in this room, enjoying and looking at the collection, thinking about the items I have and what I'm excited to use, and I think that really positively contributes to my whole experience. I actually look forward to doing it more that way. In other words, I think it's kind of harder to progress through your backlog and enjoy it if you are focused on other things. If you're focused on the things that you actually have, that tends to be a lot more easier for you to do. Now that I've kind of dealt with the attitudes around how you approach it, which I think make a difference, now there isn't one specific way to do this. It can be different for everybody, depending on what your interests are. However, One thing I like to do is have themes, as I call them. The reason I do this is because I find that one of the hardest things to do sometimes is pick a game. I'm sure everybody's had that experience where you finished a game and you come and sit in your game room for about 30 or 40 minutes having a look and just having no clue which one to pick because you're just overwhelmed with good choices. Sometimes you have a really strong inkling, but a lot of times you don't. What you will find with not having any inklings sometimes is that it can lead you to actually have periods where you don't play much, or that you wanted to relax but you ended up not relaxing because it was too difficult to choose. In other words, choice paralysis. So how do you get around that? And I think for me, the good way to decide that is to actually have little themes. So a common one that I have seen a lot of people do is on Halloween in October they play horror focused games or horror adjacent games. What I've found for me is a good way to help me decide is to focus on monthly themes. In other words, I kind of decide and pick between a few different choices of what kind of games I will focus on playing. I like to create a little list that I cycle through, and I kind of pick as and when I'm feeling closer to that time. I don't want to plan it out too much because then again, I might say let's pick to play in 6 months time racing games and then not really fancy that. So I do think there is some spontaneity that you need there. However, what I found is that having a couple of different monthly themes really helps me to decide and make those choices. A good example of that is that recently I did one where I asked my wife to pick the games I was going to play for that month. So she had to look through the collection and pick ones out for me, and it was actually really fun. I started playing Lies of P, a Souls-like game on the PlayStation 5. Now I had that game, but that game was not near the top of my list of ones I would have got round to then and there. And let me tell you, it's a fantastic game. I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to. And so that was a really great way for me to be able to experience part of my collection and to pick things in a different way. And that can be done for all sorts of things. One of the things I want to do in the upcoming year at some point is try a PlayStation 1 month where I only play PlayStation 1 games for a whole month. You can pick themes based on consoles, genres, you can even pick based on franchises. There's all sorts of different ways that you could do it. It's all sorts of arbitrary ways. You could even pick one of each letter of the alphabet and play through that way. I mean, you could even have multiple consoles where you have to play in order of age. It's really up to you, but I feel like doing something fun like that kind of has a nice challenge feel to it, and it's a great way to help you make those decisions. Now, if you've thought about the other steps of having and making your collection really meaningful so that you're excited to play all your games, that's going to be a great way to pick. Now, the next point I want to talk about is about actual consuming. So now that we've spoken about themes, I want to talk about something that you can do now to help you be more excited to play the games that you have. So for me, this is all about consuming. So when it comes to consuming, I'm talking about social media content, such as on this platform here on YouTube. There are plethoras of fantastic retrospectives from even the most niche of games and gameplay. People talk about them. There's fans out there on the internet for almost every franchise. And that really is quite a great thing. What it does is it allows you, if you have a game in your backlog and you're thinking about playing it, to consume some content, you know? I found that it's really helped me to sort of up my excitement, to prepare myself. So a good example of that is that last year when I bought Silent Hill 1 to 4, I did that because what I'd found is I'd seen somebody playing them on YouTube and I thought to myself, these games look absolutely fantastic. I'd heard about them but I'd never heard that much, so it allowed me to then decide to actually buy them and then play them. And so watching content's a good way to not only decide what to buy, but also think about things that you already have in your own collection. I mean, for example, if you've had one of those big, long 100-hour plus RPGs in your backlog for a long time, and it's been difficult to motivate yourself because the game's a long one and you feel like, oh, you know what, I'm not sure if I have the time. If you watch some videos about that, learn about the story, the world building and the characters, you might actually find yourself quite excited to get to that game, wanting to go through that journey, and then end up not only having the time, but enjoying it a lot more, rather than seeing it some chore and some big roadblock to complete to get that part of your backlog done. Instead, you will be thinking about what that game represents to you and what that franchise and the creativity behind it has really allowed that piece of media to become fantastic. Ultimately, focusing all about that kind of content around the games that you own not just helps you to be excited to play them, but I think ultimately it helps you put things into perspective. For me, one of the things I always want to say about the backlog is stop if you're not having fun. So, playing through your games should always be about having fun. It's not about playing the most number of games every year. It's not about trying to reach a certain number or percentage, unless of course that is part of the fun for you. However, you shouldn't do it at all costs. We've got to remember this is a hobby. It's fun, it's exciting, and it's entertaining. And so as part of that, you shouldn't ever force yourself to play through a terrible game for no reason at all. If you have a game and you just start playing, you're just not feeling it, then put it aside. A good example of this for me is currently Rayman 3. So a couple of years ago I played through Rayman 1 and 2 and I had such a fantastic time playing those games, and of course I definitely didn't cheat in beating Rayman 1. On a side note, I will not believe a single person who says that they finished Rayman 1 without cheating on the PlayStation 1. I don't believe it. It's so insanely hard. I ran out of the 99 lives a few times and had to add them more on. But the point was, by the time I got to Rayman 3, I was kind of a bit done with 3D platforming for then. I felt like I wanted to mix it up, so whilst I played about 2 hours of it, I decided I'll put it down and pick it up later in the future when I felt like it. And so that's kind of what it is. I don't dislike that game, it looked quite great, but I just wasn't feeling it. And that's ultimately what it is. It's going to be there when I'm ready to play it, right? There is no time limit. I own the disc, I have it in my collection. And so that's why you should stop if the fun stops. There's no pressure to get it done right now. It doesn't matter if you've put half the game in and you just don't feel like it. Just don't force yourself, just enjoy it, right? That game's still gonna be there for you. In other words, don't be afraid to move on from the game if you're not feeling it at this moment in time. What you should just be focused on is playing things that are fun. Being excited to tackle your backlog will make the whole process a lot more enjoyable. And so for that reason, that's why I always just recommend that your main focus should always be about enjoying it. So regardless, even if you have a theme, let's say, that you started wanting to do horror games and you just weren't enjoying playing horror games, don't hold yourself to it. Just focus on what's most enjoyable, what you actually want to play. So, the last point I want to talk about is actually about finishing the backlog. Now, a lot of people have this presumption that they need to finish the whole backlog to get the most value out of your games. Now, I want to put that kind of discourse aside for a second and just think back to the whole purpose that we spoke in the beginning. So, if your whole purpose is to have fun playing loads of different games and to be spoilt for choice, then playing through your backlog and always having something new to get around is fulfilling your purpose. That's why you're doing it in the first place. And so you should always be focused on enjoying what you have. Rather than thinking about getting to specific numbers or meeting certain criteria, instead think about just enjoying and mindfully using what you've got, being grateful for what you've got. Don't get caught up in the pressure. It's a hobby and it should always be fun. Now, there might be some people who really find it exciting to be able to get through every game, and that gives them a sense of accomplishment. And so that's part of your purpose and therefore why you enjoy it. But don't put that requirement on yourself unnecessarily. In other words, just have fun and use what you have. Appreciate the things that you have and enjoy each game for what it's worth. One thing that I've seen that I personally feel like is something I don't want to emulate is rushing through games to get through as many as possible. I've seen some people play games, really enjoy the game, but cut through so many different corners that they miss significant portions or sometimes even the majority of the game. They're just rushing to get those end credits so they can tick it off the box and move on to the next one. And so that's why I'm really kind of talking about this pressure element. Every game has a lot of passion and soul poured into it. You know, it's a product that involves so many different people, so many different sides of creativity, and that's always worth appreciating. So when you are playing these games, play it as much as you're enjoying them, right? Don't rush through to get it done. Instead, enjoy it, and when you're happy to move on, that's when you move on. A good example might be if we're thinking about an open world RPG like Oblivion or Skyrim or Fallout. Don't just go through that main storyline, get it done in 5 to 10 hours and then move on to the next thing. Instead, play the quest that you're interested in, level up, explore, and then do those main quests. And then once you're happy with that save, move on, right? You don't have to do everything, but at the same time, you don't have to rush through. Appreciate the game and don't push yourself just to get a number. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed having a look at how I conquer my backlog. I hope you found it interesting to think about ways that you can approach your collection, approach playing your collection, and also the ways that you can decide what games to play in the first place. I think all of those things contribute into trying to make it as positive an experience as possible. Because for me, to go back to what I've been saying, it's always about having fun, and that's what playing your backlog should be. Okay. I'm sure there's many things here that I've missed out. There are many things that I would want to say more. So if you'd like to see another video about this, please let me know. Also, if you would like to add anything to the discussion here today, and you'd like to talk about the ways you tackle and conquer your backlog, please include that down in the comments below. And of course, like and subscribe if you'd like to see more collecting content, and I'll see you in the next one, because I have another really important business meeting to attend to for another £1 trillion business, and if I don't get there, nobody's going to fix the mess that all the stocks and shares have got into. So I'll see you on the next one.